It's for your own safety, mother, my son says, his voice dripping with false concern. Robert thinks because the world is a blur to me, I don't know he's trying to steal my life. I hear the realtors whispering about listing prices in my own foyer. He's filed for a conservatorship, treating me like a senile old woman who can't read the fine print. But he's made a fatal mistake. He sees a frail mother, I see a desperate debtor who just walked into a trap of his own making. Listen to the end to hear how I handled it, and subscribe to hear more of my journey. The floorboards shudder beneath my feet before I hear the elevator chime. It's a low-frequency hum, the kind that travels through bone before it reaches the ear. I'm standing in the center of the charcoal-tiled foyer, my hand resting lightly on the edge of the console table where I keep my keys in a porcelain dish. The porcelain is cool under my fingertips, smooth as a river stone. The world around me is a blurred watercolor, charcoal tiles bleeding into cream walls, the mahogany console reduced to a dark smear against pale plaster. But I don't need my eyes to know something is wrong. The air has changed. The usual scent of Earl Grey and old vellum, my husband's first edition legal texts lining the study shelves, has been fouled by something sharper, more invasive. Industrial floor wax, the kind that smells like lemon chemicals and institutional neglect. And underneath it, a heavy, cheap sandalwood cologne. The kind a man wears when he's trying to project confidence but reeks of desperation instead. I turn my head toward the sound of the elevator doors sliding open. Two shapes move into my peripheral vision, tall, dark vertical smears against the white walls. They don't knock. They don't announce themselves. They simply walk into my home as if they own it. The primary suite has the best southern exposure, one of them says. The voice is male, clinical, detached. He's not talking to me. He's talking about me. About my home. About the penthouse my late husband and I called our fortress for 40 years. My chest tightens. I grip the edge of the console table, the porcelain dish rattling faintly under my trembling fingers. They are measuring my life for a listing. I square my shoulders. It's a reflex, muscle memory forged over 4 decades in courtrooms where weakness was blood in the water. My spine straightens into a steel rod, the same posture I used when I walked into depositions with CEOs who thought they could outmaneuver me. The apex predator, they called me. I liquidated billion-dollar empires. I never lost a case. I will not lose my home. My eyes catch a flicker of movement, a sharp, red glint dancing across the cream crown molding. A laser level. They're measuring the height of the ceilings, the width of the archways, the value of the hand-carved woodwork my husband commissioned from a master carpenter in Vermont. Who authorized you to enter this residence? I demand. My voice is low, controlled, a frequency honed to cut through the noise of a crowded courtroom. The same voice I used to silence junior associates who thought they could interrupt me mid-argument. The shadows stop moving. The laser dot dances across my blurred field of vision, landing for a second on my chest like a sniper's mark. I feel it there, a pinprick of heat against the silk of my blouse. They don't answer me. They talk over me. Mark this down, coffered ceilings, 14 feet. Custom millwork, probably adds $30,000 to the appraisal. My pulse hammers against my ribs. I am not a person to them. I am just another piece of period furniture, an obstacle to be catalogued and removed. Mother, please. You're overstimulating yourself. The voice slides out of the hallway like oil on water, slick, cloying, designed to soothe. I know that voice. I carried the man who owns it for 9 months. I taught him to walk, to read, to value integrity over expedience. I clearly failed. Robert steps into my central vision, a soft, round smudge of a man. He smells of nervous sweat and peppermint, the kind of aggressive breath mint that people chew when they're about to lie. He reaches for my elbow, his touch tentative yet possessive, as if I'm a piece of fragile china he's obligated to handle with care. I wrench my arm back with a sharp, kinetic snap. You brought realtors into your father's home, Robert? I ask. My voice is steady, but the air in the foyer feels suddenly thin, as if all the oxygen has been sucked out through the ventilation system. I wait for him to apologize, to offer some reasonable explanation, a misunderstanding, a miscommunication, anything. He doesn't offer a hug. He doesn't offer an apology. He just exhales a long, manufactured sigh of disappointment, the kind you give a child who's refused to take their medicine. We need to talk, he says. He doesn't speak. He thrusts a cold, glass rectangle inches from my face. A tablet. The screen glows with a harsh, blue-white light that burns the edges of my peripheral vision. Look at the screen, Claire. Just look. Claire. Not mother. Not mom. Claire. As if I'm a client, a stranger, a problem to be solved. I squint at the tablet, tilting my head to bring the text into the narrow cone of my remaining central vision. The macular degeneration has turned the words into a colony of black ants crawling over a white desert. I can't read the fine print, but I don't need to. I know legal documents by their structure, their rhythm, their weight. This one is heavy. At the bottom, a jagged scrawl mimics my signature. It's a ghost of my handwriting, shaky, pathetic, the signature of a woman who can no longer control her own pen. Emergency conservatorship, Robert whispers. The words land like a gavel. Signed and filed this morning. The court agrees, you can't manage the estate anymore. You're a danger to your own assets. My hands go numb. The tablet slips from my vision, and I hear Robert's breathing, shallow, rapid, the breath of a man who's just committed a crime and is waiting to see if he's going to get away with it. I didn't sign that document. But someone did. I never signed that, I say. My voice is steady, even as my pulse hammers against my ribs like a prisoner trying to escape. I meet Robert's blurred gaze, forcing myself to hold the space where I think his eyes are. Robert's shadow looms closer. I can smell the peppermint on his breath, sharp and invasive. You did, last Tuesday, he says, his voice dripping with practiced grief. You were confused, remember? You called me Arthur 3 times. Arthur. My husband. The love of my life. The federal judge who taught me that the law is a scalpel, not a bludgeon. Arthur has been dead for 2 years, and I have never, not once, confused my son for my husband. But Robert says it with such conviction, such carefully calibrated sorrow, that a lesser woman would doubt her own pulse. You're not well, mother, he continues, his voice softening into a caress. The doctor says your cognitive decline is accelerating. The hallucinations, the paranoia, it's all part of the disease. We need to keep you safe. Safe. Fragile. Cognitive decline. He wraps his betrayal in the soft cotton wool of medical necessity, and for a moment, just a moment, I feel the ground tilt beneath me. Not because I believe him, but because I realize how easily others will. A 72-year-old woman with advanced macular degeneration, living alone in a penthouse worth 8 figures. A concerned son, taking the responsible steps to protect his vulnerable mother. The narrative writes itself. A new shadow emerges from the kitchen, a thick, teal-colored block. A woman. She doesn't introduce herself. The smell of latex and antiseptic follows her like a fog. Time to sit down, Mrs. Last name, she says. Her voice is flat, professional, the monotone of a woman who's handled difficult patients before. She moves toward me with the practiced efficiency of a nurse or a home health aide, her footsteps deliberate and measured. Before I can pivot, her hands are on me. They aren't comforting. They are clamps. She guides me toward the wingback chair near the window, the one where I used to sit with Arthur and read case files aloud while he sipped bourbon and pointed out the flaws in opposing counsel's logic. Her grip is firm but not cruel, a leverage that speaks of training, of experience, of knowing exactly how much pressure to apply to move a resistant body without causing visible bruising. I am being physically managed in my own living room. Elena. That's her name. I hear Robert murmur it as he steps aside to let her work. Elena doesn't ask if I need help. She doesn't wait for my consent. She simply moves me, as if I am a piece of furniture that needs to be rearranged. I sit. Not because I want to, but because the alternative is a struggle I cannot win. Not yet. I try to surge upward, my hands gripping the mahogany armrests of the wingback chair. The wood is smooth under my palms, familiar, solid. If I can just stand, if I can just reclaim my vertical space. Elena's hand drops onto my shoulder. It's a heavy, dead weight, pushing me back down with a force that shocks me. Let's not have a fall, she murmurs, her voice as flat as a legal disclaimer. The physical indignity of it, being pinned by a stranger in scrubs, in my own home, coils a cold, logical fire in my gut. I test her strength, leaning subtly to the left. She compensates instantly, her hands shifting to maintain pressure. She's strong. Younger. Trained. I am a retired apex predator, trapped in the body of a 72-year-old woman with brittle bones and failing eyes. The predator inside me is snarling, but the body is a cage. I stop struggling. Not because I've surrendered, but because I'm gathering data. Elena's grip loosens slightly, and I feel her shift her weight onto her back foot. She thinks I've accepted the situation. She thinks I'm beaten. Good. Let her think that. Robert turns away from me, moving toward the wall near the foyer. I hear the distinct tick-tick-tap of him interacting with a touch screen, the Arca Systems hub we had installed last year for convenience. Smart locks, climate control, automated lighting. Arthur loved the damn thing. I tolerated it. A high-pitched, digital chirp echoes through the penthouse, followed by the heavy, motorized thunk of deadbolts engaging in unison. Every window. Every door. Even the service entrance in the kitchen. The Arca system is now on protective mode, Mother, Robert announces, his voice carrying a note of satisfaction. For your own good. No wandering. No accidents. The fortress has officially become a panopticon. I am locked inside a digital cage, and my son holds the key. I count the seconds between the chirp and the mechanical engagement. 5 seconds. The locks cycle in sequence, foyer first, then the bedroom, then the kitchen. I file this information away, a small piece of data in the mental map I'm constructing. Robert steps back into my field of vision, and I can see the blurred outline of his phone in his hand, the screen glowing faintly. You'll be more comfortable this way, he says. Elena will take care of everything. I don't respond. I keep my face blank, my posture slack. If he thinks I've surrendered, he'll stop looking for the teeth behind the gums. Robert's phone buzzes, a frantic, rhythmic vibration that cuts through the silence. He steps away, moving toward the hallway, but in the sealed quiet of the penthouse, his muffled voice carries. I told you, Miller, I'm liquidating. The archives go up for private auction Friday. The bridge loan will be covered. Miller. Not a banker. Not a legitimate lender. Miller is a name I know from the bankruptcy circuits, a consultant, who buys distressed debt at pennies on the dollar and then bleeds the debtor dry through enforcement and fees. A predator in a three-piece suit. Robert isn't saving me. He's stripping my life for parts to pay off a shark. I hear the tremor in his voice, the high-pitched edge of a man who's drowning and grasping for anything to stay afloat. He's not just failing, he's desperate. And desperate men make reckless decisions. The archives. My husband's legal archives. 40 years of case files, personal correspondence, handwritten notes from federal judges and Supreme Court clerks. History. Legacy. The intellectual inheritance Arthur spent a lifetime building. Robert is selling it to the highest bidder. My son isn't just a failure. He's a looter. I let my posture sag. I let my jaw hang just a fraction of an inch lower. The poker face I perfected in 1,000 negotiations takes over, a mask of vacant, elderly confusion. I think I need my tea, Robert, I murmur, my voice thin and reedy, the voice of a woman who's given up. Elena's grip on my shoulder loosens slightly. Her posture shifts from combatant to caretaker, her hand moving to pat my arm in a gesture that's meant to be soothing. Of course, she says. Let's get you settled. Robert glances over, and I can feel his gaze sweep over me, assessing. He's looking for resistance, for the apex predator he knows I used to be. He doesn't see her. He sees a frail, confused old woman who needs her tea. Perfect. To beat a predator, you must first convince them you are already dead. Elena leads me toward the bedroom, her hand light on my elbow now, guiding rather than forcing. I don't use my cane. Instead, I count. 1, 2, 3, pivot. I listen to the cycle of the smart locks, the 5-second delay between the digital chirp and the mechanical engagement. I smell the faint metallic tang of copper from the kitchen, the one spot where the air filtration system creates a slight cross breeze. The Arca system's microphones struggle there, the sound distorted by the hum of the refrigerator compressor. I am mapping the terrain of my imprisonment, looking for the gaps in the code. Every system has a backdoor. I just need to find the handle. Elena helps me onto the bed, and I let her arrange the pillows behind my back. I murmur my thanks, my voice barely above a whisper. She leaves the door ajar, and I hear her footsteps retreat toward the kitchen. I am alone. But I am not helpless. I reach out, my fingers searching the surface of the nightstand. I find the cold, circular weight of the judge's Patek Philippe, the vintage watch Arthur wore every day of his professional life. I lift it to my ear, listening to the faint, rhythmic tick of the mechanical movement. I trace the hands with my fingertips, feeling for the positions. The hour hand is at 10, the minute hand at 3. 10:15 a.m. Robert thinks he has inherited an estate. He doesn't realize he has entered a restructuring negotiation with a woman who has liquidated billion-dollar empires. I set the watch down carefully, placing it back in its exact position on the nightstand. My hands are steady now, the tremor of fear replaced by the cold, methodical calm of a predator who has identified her prey. I am Claire. I do not lose. I will not treat Robert as a son. He is a toxic asset, and I am going to strip him to the bone. Efficiency is peace of mind, mother. Robert's footsteps echo on the hardwood as he crosses the threshold into my bedroom. I hear the faint rustle of his jacket, expensive fabric, probably cashmere, purchased with money he doesn't have. He stops at my bedside table, and I hear the soft tap-tap-tap of his fingers drumming against something plastic. I've installed something to help you, he says. I turn my head toward the sound. There's a new shape on my nightstand, a sleek white plastic tower I don't recognize. It emits a sterile, mechanical hum, a low-frequency vibration that sets my teeth on edge. It's called the Arca Med Vault, Robert continues, his voice taking on the rehearsed cadence of a sales pitch. It's synced to the cloud. It dispenses your regimen at precise intervals, morning, noon, evening, bedtime. If the drawer isn't emptied within 30 minutes of the alert, the system pings Elena's phone. He taps the device again, and I hear a soft beep, followed by the mechanical whir of a drawer sliding open. See? Efficient. Safe. No more missed doses. I don't respond. I'm staring at the white tower, my blurred vision reducing it to a pale smudge against the mahogany of the nightstand. But I don't need to see it clearly to understand what it is. It's not a healthcare tool. It's a digital tether. Robert has turned my basic survival, my medication, my ability to care for myself, into a data point he can monitor from his smartphone. He's ensuring I stay compliant, docile, quiet. A prisoner who refuses to take her pills is a problem. A prisoner who swallows them on schedule is manageable. Elena approaches with a small paper cup. I hear the faint rustle of her scrubs, the soft squeak of her rubber-soled shoes on the hardwood. She stops beside my bed, and I smell the faint antiseptic scent that clings to her like a second skin. "Time for your afternoon dose," she says. She holds the cup out to me, and I take it. The water is tepid, lukewarm, as if she filled it from the tap and let it sit for 10 minutes before bringing it to me. The pill is a small, chalky oblong. I roll it between my fingers, feeling the smooth coating, the faint embossed lettering I can't read. Lorazepam. I know the shape from my husband's final days, when the hospice nurse brought a weekly pill organizer and filled it with sedatives to ease his anxiety, to quiet the terror of a brilliant mind slowly shutting down. I place the pill on my tongue and swallow the water. Elena watches me, her gaze steady and clinical. "Good girl," she murmurs. I don't correct her. Within 20 minutes, the sharp edges of the room begin to melt. The mahogany nightstand blurs further, the cream walls bleeding into the charcoal curtains. My thoughts, usually like a series of clean files organized in perfect order, become a stack of papers caught in a draft, scattering, overlapping, impossible to grasp. My tongue feels thick, a useless slab of meat in my mouth. The apex predator is being tranquilized, turned into a docile house pet so the looters can work in peace. I tilt my head back against the pillows, my cloudy eyes catching the tiny, pulsing green status lights in the ceiling corners. I count them. 1, 2, 3, 4. Passive infrared sensors. Smart mics. The ARCA system doesn't just lock the doors. It listens for distress. That's what the marketing brochure said when Arthur and I first installed it. Advanced AI algorithms detect falls, cries for help, and irregular breathing patterns. In reality, it's a panopticon designed by a tech bro who's never spent a day in a courtroom and doesn't understand the difference between surveillance and care. Every time I sigh, every time I shuffle my feet, the algorithm notes it. I imagine the data stream flowing into Robert's phone, timestamps, audio snippets, motion logs. A digital diary of my captivity. I feel the weight of 1,000 digital eyes. To move is to be tracked. To speak is to be recorded. I am a prisoner in a glass house where the walls have ears. I close my eyes and let the sedative pull me under, but even in the haze, a small, cold part of my mind remains alert, cataloging every sensor, every microphone, every weakness in the system. From the hallway, the sound of rhythmic sliding begins, leather dragging against wood. Schlick. Schlick. It's a sound I know well. The sound of the judge's legal archives being pulled from the shelves in the library. My husband spent 40 years curating those volumes, goatskin-bound case files, handwritten briefs from Supreme Court clerks, personal correspondence with federal judges. They are a history of federal precedents, a legacy of a man who believed the law was a living thing that required careful stewardship. Robert is stacking them in cardboard boxes. I hear the rhythmic thump of each box hitting the floor, and each impact is a heartbeat of my husband's legacy being prepared for the auction block. Thump. The Reynolds case. Arthur's first major victory as a district judge. Thump. The pension fund litigation. 300 pages of handwritten notes. Thump. Personal letters from Justice Ginsburg, thanking Arthur for his mentorship. Robert isn't just stealing money. He's erasing our fingerprints from the world. I press my hands flat against the mattress, gripping the sheets so tightly my knuckles ache. The sedative dulls the sharp edge of my rage, but it doesn't extinguish it. It just pushes it down, compressing it into a cold, dense core of fury that I will carry until I have the strength to act. Where is Barnaby? My voice is a dry rasp, barely loud enough to carry across the room. I haven't heard the familiar click-clack of his claws on the parquet, the soft huff of his breathing as he settles at the foot of my bed. Robert doesn't look up from his packing. I hear the rustle of packing tape being unspooled, the sharp rip as he seals another box. "He's at the county shelter, Mother," he says, his tone flat and dismissive. "He's a tripping hazard, and with your condition, we can't risk a broken hip." The air leaves my lungs. Barnaby is 12 years old, a senior Labrador with graying whiskers and arthritic hips. He's been with me since Arthur's funeral, the one living creature who offers me unconditional loyalty. I imagine him in a concrete kennel, smelling of bleach and despair, surrounded by the barking of younger dogs and the clanging of metal gates. This isn't about safety. It's a tactical strike, designed to break my spirit. Robert has removed the last anchor tethering me to normalcy, to love, to the life I built with my husband. I turn my face toward the wall, letting the tears slide silently down my cheeks. I don't give Robert the satisfaction of seeing me sob. But inside, the cold core of fury grows denser, heavier, a gravitational force pulling everything toward a single point of retribution. I wait for Elena to go to the kitchen. I hear her footsteps retreat down the hallway, the soft click of the refrigerator door opening. I count to 30, then I swing my legs over the side of the bed and stand. The sedative makes the floor tilt slightly, but I steady myself against the nightstand and shuffle toward the library. I reach for the heavy, brass-based landline, a relic from the 80s, installed when Arthur and I first moved into the penthouse. Robert must have forgotten to remove it during his smart home overhaul. I lift the receiver, expecting the steady hum of a dial tone. Instead, a pleasant, synthetic female voice speaks directly into my ear. "Outbound calling is restricted under user profile, Ward. Please contact your primary administrator." I slam the phone down, the brass base rattling against the marble surface of the side table. The ARCA system has cut my tongue out. I am physically present in the heart of the city, surrounded by 8 million people, but I am digitally buried 6 feet deep. No calls. No messages. No contact with the outside world. I stand there, gripping the edge of the table, my breath coming in short, shallow gasps. Robert has thought of everything. Almost. I move toward the French doors leading to the balcony, desperate for the smell of the city, the exhaust fumes, the hot dog carts, the real world beyond this gilded cage. A hand clamps onto my upper arm. "Where are we going, Claire?" Elena's voice drips with a mockery of kindness, the false concern of a jailer who enjoys her work. She pivots me away from the light, her grip tight enough to leave bruises I can't see. "The balcony is a fall risk," she says. "You're confused again. Let's get you back to your safe space." She pushes me toward the bedroom, her fingers digging into the soft flesh of my upper arm. I stumble, my legs still unsteady from the sedative, and she catches me with a practiced efficiency that feels more like a tackle than support. "There we go," she murmurs. "Nice and easy." She enjoys this. I can hear it in the slight uptick in her voice, the barely suppressed satisfaction of someone who has spent her entire life taking orders from people like me and now has the power to give them. The quiet power of the jailer over the elite. I let her guide me back to the bed, my body pliant and cooperative. But inside, I'm cataloging every detail, the pressure points of her grip, the rhythm of her breathing, the exact angle at which she pivots my body. Knowledge is leverage. And leverage is power. Robert leaves his tablet on the dining table to answer the door. I hear the soft chime of the doorbell, the heavy tread of his footsteps moving toward the foyer. I shuffle past the table, my hand accidentally brushing the screen. The haptic feedback buzzes under my fingertips, and because Robert has left the accessibility features on, probably to monitor my own interactions with the system, a mechanical voice whispers. "New message from Miller, final notice. The bridge loan is 48 hours past due. Foreclosure on startup assets begins Friday. liquidate the judge's estate or face litigation. There it is. The apex predator finds the scent of blood. Robert isn't just greedy. He's a cornered animal, thrashing in a trap of his own making. His tech startup, whatever vaporware he's been peddling to venture capitalists, is on the verge of collapse. He's borrowed money from a predatory lender, and now the debt is coming due. He's not liquidating my estate to care for me. He's liquidating it to save himself. And cornered animals make mistakes. I move away from the table before Robert returns, my heart hammering with the first real surge of hope I've felt since this nightmare began. He's desperate. And desperate men are careless. That night, despite the haze of the sedatives, I don't sleep. I pace the perimeter of my bedroom, counting the steps to the kitchen. 22 steps. Turn. 8 steps to the galley threshold. I feel the transition from plush carpet to the cold, hard tile beneath my slippers. I move by touch, my fingers skimming the wainscoting, tracing the seams in the wallpaper. I am memorizing the blind spots where the motion sensors have a 3-second lag, the places where the algorithm loses track of me. I am a ghost in my own home, a blind woman learning to haunt the man who thinks he's already buried her. I reach the kitchen and stop, listening. The refrigerator hums. The smart hub in the living room emits a faint, rhythmic pulse of light, green, then dark, then green again. I take 3 steps to the left, then pivot back toward the bedroom. The sensor in the hallway doesn't trigger. A gap. I file it away. Every system has a backdoor. I just need to find the handle. I stand at the threshold of the kitchen, my hand resting lightly on the doorframe. Elena is boiling water for tea, and the heavy, industrial-grade exhaust fan over the stove kicks on with a low-frequency roar. The noise is deafening, a wall of white sound that drowns out everything else. Through the roar, I hear the Arca hub in the living room chirp. Command not recognized. Please repeat. I freeze. The fan creates a wall of white noise that baffles the smart mics. The algorithm can't distinguish my voice, or Elena's, from the ambient chaos of the ventilation system and the clatter of copper pots hanging from the rack above the stove. I realize the dead zone isn't just a place. It's a sound. In the roar of the ventilation and the clatter of copper, I can find my voice again. I step back into the hallway, my pulse racing. I have a weapon. I reach behind the heavy copper stockpots hanging on the wall, my fingers searching the narrow gap between the cookware and the tile backsplash. My fingers find it, a small, puck-shaped device, smooth plastic and cool to the touch. It's an older voice assistant I bought months ago to listen to law journals and podcasts. I tucked it away behind the pots when Arthur installed the Arca system, intending to donate it to Goodwill. Robert must have forgotten about it during his smart home overhaul. I lift it carefully, feeling for the power button. It emits a soft, musical chime, the startup sound, and a cheerful female voice whispers. Hello. Ready to help. It isn't connected to the Arca hub. It's on the building's guest Wi-Fi, a separate network Arthur set up for contractors and delivery drivers. It's a rogue node in Robert's network. My heart leaps. It's a small, plastic miracle hidden in the steam and the shadows. I carefully set it back in its hiding place, my hands trembling, not from fear, but from the first real surge of adrenaline I've felt in days. I have access. Elena enters with my evening dose. Down the hatch, she says, her voice flat and clinical. She holds out the small paper cup with the pill and the glass of tepid water. I take the pill and place it on my tongue, but I nestle it under my tongue instead, wedging it against my molar. I swallow the water with a convincing gulp, letting my throat work visibly, and offer Elena a vacant, drugged smile. She nods, satisfied, and turns to leave. Sleep well, Claire, she says, locking the door behind her. I wait until her footsteps fade down the hallway. Then I spit the pill into a tissue and tuck it into the pocket of my robe. The fog is lifting. The sedative haze that has dulled my thoughts for the past 2 days is clearing, and beneath it, the cold, methodical mind of the apex predator is waking up. Tonight, the predator goes back to work. 5:45. The penthouse is a graveyard of shadows. I slide out from under the heavy silk duvet, my bare feet finding the cold floorboards. The wood is smooth under my soles, polished to a mirror shine by decades of careful maintenance. I count the steps in my head. 1, 2, 3. I move with the slow, rhythmic grace of a ghost, timing my steps to the 3-second lag I discovered in the Arca motion sensors. I don't use the wall for support. The friction of skin against wallpaper might be picked up by the high-sensitivity mics embedded in the ceiling corners. I am a shadow moving through a charcoal sketch, counting heartbeats until I reach the threshold of the kitchen. The air is cooler here, the cross breeze from the ventilation system brushing against my skin like a whisper. I pause at the doorway, listening. The refrigerator hums. The smart hub in the living room emits its faint, rhythmic pulse. No footsteps. No breathing. Elena is asleep in the guest room, her door closed. Robert left hours ago, muttering something about meeting Miller in person before the deadline. I am alone. I step into the kitchen. I reach the stainless steel range, my fingers skimming the cool surface until they find the heavy, knurled dial of the industrial exhaust fan. Arthur insisted on the restaurant-grade model when we renovated the kitchen. If we're going to cook, Claire, we should do it properly. I wrench the dial to the right. The motor groans, then surges into a deafening, metallic roar. The vibration rattles the copper pots hanging above me, the sound cascading into a wall of white noise that drowns out everything else. Under the cover of this artificial storm, the Arca hub in the living room goes deaf. I hear it chirp, confused, command not recognized. Please repeat. I am standing in a 4-foot radius of absolute privacy, the white noise a wall that Robert's digital spies cannot penetrate. I steady my breathing and reach behind the Le Creuset stockpot. I tap the hidden puck, my fingers finding the smooth plastic surface and the slightly raised power button. Call Marcus, private line, I whisper. The device pulses a soft blue, a light I can barely see but feel as a faint warmth against my fingertips. The ringing is a rhythmic torture, each electronic trill stretching out for an eternity. Finally, a click. Who is this? Marcus's voice is sharp, weary, and unmistakably elite, the voice of a man who's been woken up at 2 in the morning by a call from an unknown number. It's the predator, Marcus, I breathe. There's a pause. I can almost hear the gears in his mind shifting, the recognition clicking into place. Claire. His voice drops an octave, suddenly alert. Where are you calling from? Robert said you were. Don't speak, I interrupt. Just listen. I am being liquidated. Another pause. Then, quietly, understood. I grip the edge of the counter, steadying myself. The sedative from earlier is still in my system, making the floor tilt slightly, but I force my mind into focus. I have one chance at this. I don't waste breath on sentiment. Robert is drowning, I say. He's into a shark named Miller. I need you to find every cent of that debt. Don't block the sale of the judge's archives, let it happen, but you be the one holding the paper. I want to own Robert's debt by sunrise. My voice is a razor, cutting through the roar of the fan. Use that sovereign contingency fund, I continue. If he wants to sell my life, I'll be the one who buys the invoice. There's a sharp intake of breath on the other end of the line. Claire, the sovereign fund is. I know what it is, Marcus. That's why Arthur and I set it up. For emergencies. This qualifies. Understood. I'll need to move fast. Miller won't sell cheap. Pay whatever it takes. I want the bridge loan, the startup debt, everything Robert owes. By the time the NYSE opens, I want to be his largest creditor. Consider it done. I close my eyes, relief flooding through me like a shot of cold water. Thank you, Marcus. Claire. His voice softened slightly. Are you safe? Not yet. But I will be. A floorboard creaks behind me. My heart stops. I kill the call with a sweep of my hand, my fingers fumbling across the puck until I find the disconnect button. The device goes silent, the blue light fading to black. I grab a box of crackers from the counter, my hands trembling. The kitchen door swings open, and the teal smudge of Elena appears. What are you doing up, Claire? Her voice is a suspicious lash, sharp and accusing. I let my shoulders slump, widening my eyes into a vacant, watery stare. I rattle the cardboard box with trembling hands, letting the crackers inside shift and clatter. I just wanted a biscuit, dear, I murmur, my voice thin and reedy. The judge usually brings me a biscuit before bed. I thought he might be in the kitchen. I let my gaze drift past her, as if I'm looking for Arthur's ghost in the shadows. Elena's expression softens slightly, or at least, the tension in her posture eases. She steps closer, her hand reaching out to take the box from me. Arthur's gone, Claire, she says, her voice dripping with false sympathy. Come on. Let's get you back to bed. I let her guide me out of the kitchen, my body pliant and cooperative. Inside, my pulse is hammering. That was too close. Elena's hand rests on the Arca interface mounted on the kitchen wall as we pass. Suddenly, the hub chirps, a sharp, urgent sound that cuts through the roar of the exhaust fan. Alert, unusual activity detected in estate accounts. Robert's muffled shout echoes from the living room, sharp and panicked. What the hell? Someone's pinging the Miller loan. My heart skips. Marcus is moving too fast, or he's moving exactly as planned. The digital tripwire has been pulled. Robert is panicking, which means the trap is beginning to close. But I am still on the wrong side of the bars. Elena's grip on my arm tightens. She glances at the Arca interface, her eyes narrowing. Stay here, she says, her voice suddenly cold and professional. She leaves me standing in the hallway and strides toward the living room, her footsteps heavy and purposeful. I hear Robert's voice, frantic and high-pitched. Who's accessing my accounts? Marcus? Did she? I don't wait to hear the rest. I shuffle back toward the bedroom, my heart pounding. The plan is in motion. I just need to survive until morning. The hidden puck behind the pots vibrates, a soft, rhythmic pulse that I feel more than hear. I freeze, my hand gripping the doorframe of my bedroom. A mechanical whisper cuts through the silence. Message from him, acquisition in progress. Hold the line. A surge of adrenaline, cold and sharp as gin, hits my system. I've done it. I've reached outside the cage. For a second, I allow myself to feel the weight of the penthouse shifting back toward me. The fortress is mine again. I am no longer a ward, a patient, a liability to be managed. I am a creditor. And creditors have power. I just need to survive until the paperwork clears at the opening of the New York Stock Exchange. 6 hours. Maybe 7. I can do this. I take a deep breath and step into the bedroom, closing the door softly behind me. You think you're clever, don't you? Elena's voice is right at my ear. I spin around, my heart lurching into my throat. She's standing in the doorway, backlit by the dim hallway light. She isn't looking at the Arca hub. Instead, she holds up a small, plastic device with a glowing antenna, a cheap baby monitor, the kind you can buy at any drugstore for $20. Robert bought the high-tech stuff, she says, her voice dripping with satisfaction. I prefer the analog basics. My blood turns to ice. She's been listening to the dead zone on a separate frequency. The exhaust fan baffled the Arca mics, but it did nothing to stop a simple radio receiver positioned in the hallway. She hasn't just heard my plan. She's been recording it. The apex predator walked straight into a secondary ambush. Elena smiles, a thin, cruel expression that doesn't reach her eyes. Robert's going to love this, she says. Elena doesn't wait for a response. She crosses the room in 3 strides, her hand clamping onto my wrist. She twists my arm behind my back, a professional, agonizing lock that sends a sharp spike of pain through my shoulder. I cry out, stumbling forward. She shoves me toward the bedroom door, and I hit the corner of the mahogany dining table on the way out, my knee cracking against the edge. The pain is instant and blinding, radiating up my thigh. Robert meets us in the hallway, his face a red, panicked blur. She's talking to Marcus. Elena hisses. She's trying to kill the Miller deal. Robert's eyes go wide. He isn't my son anymore. He's a frantic debtor watching his last payday evaporate. You stupid, arrogant, he doesn't finish the sentence. He grabs my other arm, and together, they drag me back into the bedroom. Robert slams the door so hard the judge's portrait on the wall rattles, the frame shaking on its hook. Hold her down, Robert hisses. I struggle, twisting my body, trying to wrench free, but Elena is a mountain of teal polyester. She pins my head against the pillow, her forearm pressing down on my collarbone with enough force to make breathing difficult. Robert fumbles with the Arca Medvault on the nightstand, his fingers jabbing at the touchscreen. I hear the soft beep of the override sequence, then the mechanical whir of the drawer sliding open. He emerges with 2 pills, not 1. You want to be the apex predator, he sneers, his voice cracking. Try doing it while you can't even find your own feet. He shoves the pills toward my mouth, and I clench my jaw, turning my head away. Elena's hand clamps onto my jaw, her fingers digging into the hinge until the pressure forces my mouth open. Robert forces the pills onto my tongue, then clamps his hand over my mouth and nose, holding it shut. I can't breathe. I can't spit them out. I'm forced to swallow the double dose of chemical silence. I lay there, the floor beginning to tilt as the drugs flood my bloodstream. The edges of the room blur further, the charcoal and cream bleeding together into a gray fog. My limbs feel heavy, disconnected from my body, as if they belong to someone else. Robert drags a metal wastebasket to my bedside. I hear the scritch of a match striking against the box, then the sharp smell of sulfur. Then, a sweeter, heavier scent, the smell of aging paper and ink. He is burning the judge's private letters. The ones Arthur wrote to me from the bench. The ones he tucked into my briefcase when I was working late, filled with lines of poetry and legal philosophy and the small, tender observations of a man who saw the world through a lens of justice and mercy. The ones that held the soul of our 40 years. The orange glow of the fire dances in my blurred vision, a funeral pyre for my memories. I try to reach for the wastebasket, but my hand won't obey. It lifts an inch off the mattress, then falls back, useless. Robert doesn't say anything. He just feeds the letters into the fire, one by one, watching them curl and blacken and turn to ash. Robert leans down, his face inches from mine. His breath smells of stale coffee and desperation, a sour, acrid scent that makes my stomach turn. The facility transport arrives at 6 a.m., Mother, he says, his voice low and cold. You'll be in a memory ward in the suburbs by noon. I'll have the Face ID transfer for the vault before you leave, or I'll let Elena manage you until you give it up. He straightens, his shadow looming over me. You should have just stayed quiet, he says. You should have just let me handle it. He blows out the last of the fire, the flame hissing as it dies. The room plunges into pitch blackness, filled with the stench of ash and burnt paper. I am drugged, blind, and defeated. Or so he thinks. But as the sedatives pull me under, dragging me down into the gray fog of unconsciousness, a small, cold part of my mind remains alert. Marcus is moving. The paperwork is in motion. Robert thinks he's won. He's wrong. The chemical tide pulls at my consciousness, a heavy, velvet weight pressing down on my mind like a physical force. But I fight it. I press the crown of the Patek Philippe into the soft flesh of my palm, twisting it until the sharp edge digs into the skin. The sting of pain cuts through the fog, a small, bright point of clarity in the gray haze. Tick. 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 I synchronize my breathing to the watch, counting every second to keep the apex predator from drifting into the abyss. Inhale for 4 ticks. Hold for 4. Exhale for 4. I am not a victim lying drugged in a bed. I am a litigator in the middle of a marathon deposition, fighting to stay sharp, to stay present, to outlast the opposing counsel who thinks I'm ready to fold. I will not close my eyes until the deal is closed. The hours crawl by. I feel the passage of time in the steady rhythm of the watch against my palm, the faint vibration of the mechanical movement, a lifeline tethering me to consciousness. 3 a.m. 4 a.m. 5 a.m. Marcus is moving. The paperwork is clearing. The trap is closing. I just need to survive until dawn. The ARCA system begins its natural sunrise protocol. The ceiling panels shift from a bruised purple to a simulated, mocking gold, the LED lights gradually brightening to mimic the rising sun. It's a feature Arthur loved. It's easier on the eyes than an alarm clock, Claire. I remain perfectly still, my limbs heavy and limp. I let my mouth hang open slightly, my breathing shallow and irregular. I mimic the total surrender of a body broken by lorazepam, a woman who has finally been crushed under the weight of betrayal and chemistry. Through the haze, I hear the elevator chime. The vultures are circling. I hear footsteps, 2 sets. Robert's frantic, uneven stride. Elena's heavy, deliberate tread. They think they are coming for a corpse. They don't realize they are walking into a courtroom where I am both the judge and the executioner. Robert bursts in, his footsteps frantic and uncoordinated. He smells of old coffee and the metallic tang of fear, the sour scent of a man who hasn't slept, who's been up all night watching his empire collapse in real time. "We're out of time," he hisses to Elena. I keep my eyes closed, my breathing steady and shallow. "Miller's people are at the firm," Robert continues, his voice rising with panic. "If the vault isn't unlocked by 9, they'll trigger the clawback provisions on the startup. Everything. The intellectual property, the contracts, the..." He stops at the foot of my bed, his shadow blocking the fake sunlight. He needs my Face ID to unlock the ARCA vault, the digital heart of my wealth, where the liquid assets and portfolio access codes are stored. He's a looter in a hurry. And a looter in a hurry is a looter who stops checking for tripwires. Robert grabs my shoulder, rolling me onto my back with a rough, clumsy yank. My head lolls to the side, and I let it fall naturally, offering no resistance. I drop the left corner of my mouth and let a thin trail of saliva escape, sliding down my chin. When I open my eyes, I keep them unfocused, staring at a point 3 inches past his ear, my gaze vacant and glassy. "Rob, ERT?" I slur the word, dragging out the syllables, making my voice a wet, broken whisper. I play the part of the neurological collapse, a woman whose brain has finally short-circuited under the pressure of drugs and stress and the systematic dismantling of her life. I see the flash of cruel relief in Robert's eyes. He thinks I'm finally gone. He thinks he's won. "Mother, I need you to look at the screen," he says, his voice taking on a false, saccharine gentleness. "Just for a second. Then you can rest." I blink slowly, a theatrical struggle, my eyelids fluttering as if I'm fighting to stay conscious. He thrusts the tablet in front of my face, the screen glowing with the Arca Vault login interface. Unlock it, mother. Just look at the lens. I blink slowly, letting my eyes roll slightly to the left. Can't see the light, I wheeze. I turn my face away, twitching my hands as if in a tremor, my fingers jerking against the sheets. The screen is dark. Robert growls in frustration, a low, guttural sound. He can't get a biometric lock on a moving, distorted target. The Face ID requires a clear, steady gaze, and I'm giving him nothing but a broken, twitching mess. Damn it, he snaps. Switch to manual override. He's abandoning the secure Face ID for the emergency chamber code, the backup password Arthur and I set up years ago for exactly this kind of scenario. He's opening the door for me. Elena steps closer, her hand resting on my shoulder as if to steady me. You want me to hold her head? She asks. No, Robert says, his fingers already jabbing at the tablet screen. The manual override is faster. I just need the code. I sink back into the pillow, positioning my head inches from the smart hub on the nightstand. I know the safe mode settings of the Arca system intimately. The smart mics stay active for emergency voice commands even when the user is restricted, designed to allow elderly or disabled users to call for help in a crisis. Robert is leaning over me, his face inches from the tablet, his fingers hovering over the keypad. He's so focused on the money, on the deadline, on the threat of Miller's clawback provisions, that he's forgotten I'm the one who wrote the security protocols for the firm's private estates. He thinks I'm a vegetable. I'm a recorder. And every word he says is being logged by the system. Robert mutters the sequence under his breath as he types, a nervous habit from childhood he never outgrew. October 24th, 41, he whispers. I recognize it instantly, October 24th, 1941. The date of the judge's first landmark ruling, a decision on pension fund protections that set federal precedent for 3 decades. The fool used my husband's chamber code for the override. My mind locks the numbers into place, filing them away with the cold precision of a woman who has spent 40 years cataloging evidence. The tablet chirps, a soft, cheerful sound. Access granted. Robert lets out a ragged, triumphant laugh, his shoulders sagging with relief. Finally, he breathes. Finally. He thinks he's in. He doesn't realize that by entering that code, he's just verified his identity for the audit trail I'm about to create. He's signed his own confession. With a sudden, violent clarity, I drop the slur. My spine snaps straight against the headboard, my posture shifting from broken to regal in the space of a single breath. Execute macro, sovereign, I command. My voice isn't a whisper anymore. It's a gavel, sharp and absolute. The smart hub on the nightstand pulses a violent, emergency red. Voice signature verified, senior partner, the system replies, its synthetic voice calm and clinical. The tablet in Robert's hand freezes, the screen going black for a split second before a massive red X overwrites his transfer request. Robert stares at the screen, his mouth hanging open. What did you? Marcus didn't just buy the debt. He integrated the sovereign fund into the Arca kernel, replacing Robert's administrator privileges with mine. The penthouse isn't Robert's sanctuary anymore. It's a trap that just snapped shut. The high-pitched chirp of the lockdown repeats, but this time, it's followed by a new sound. Administrator privileges revoked. Account Miller loan, acquired by Sovereign Holdings. Robert stares at the screen, his face draining of color. Every door in the penthouse hisses as it deadbolts from the outside. The front door. The service entrance. The balcony. Even the bedroom door behind Elena. The lights shift to a cold, sterile white, the warm, sunrise, protocol overridden by emergency lockdown mode. The digital panopticon has a new warden. Marcus has finalized the hostile takeover of Robert's debt, purchasing the bridge loan from Miller for pennies on the dollar and immediately transferring the creditor rights to Sovereign Holdings, my company, the one Arthur and I set up years ago as a firewall against exactly this kind of predatory attack. I don't just own the home. I own the son. Robert backs away from the bed, his hands trembling. No. No, this isn't, you can't. Oh, but I can, I say calmly. And I did. I reach out and pluck the tablet from Robert's limp, shaking hands. My blind eyes find his blurred shape with terrifying precision, my gaze locking onto the space where I know his face is. You forgot the first rule of bankruptcy, Robert, I say, my voice as cold and sharp as a scalpel. Never liquidate a predator unless you're sure she's dead. I sit up, the chemical haze vanishing behind a wall of pure, focused intent. The tremor in my hands is gone. The slack-jawed expression is gone. The vacant stare is gone. The frail woman is gone. The apex predator is back at the head of the table. Robert stumbles backward, his shoulder hitting the wall. You were faking? The stroke? Yes. The blindness? No. But you underestimated what a blind woman can do when she's spent 40 years navigating courtrooms without being able to read the faces of opposing counsel. I set the tablet down on the nightstand, next to the Patek Philippe. I counted every step. I mapped every sensor. I found the dead zone in your expensive surveillance system. And I called in a favor from the one person you were stupid enough to forget about. I turn my gaze toward Elena, who's standing frozen near the door, her hands still resting on the handle. Elena, you're fired, I say calmly. The police will be at the service entrance in 10 minutes with the evidence of elder abuse Marcus recorded from the baby monitor you so helpfully left running. Elena's face goes white. You can't prove. I can prove everything. The forced sedation. The physical restraint. The illegal confinement. Marcus has been documenting it all remotely since the moment I triggered the Sovereign Protocol. You should have stuck with the high-tech surveillance, Elena. At least that's encrypted. Elena doesn't wait for the police. She yanks the door handle, but it doesn't budge. The deadbolt is engaged from the outside. Let me out, she screams. No, I say. You'll wait for the officers like a civilized person. I turn my blurred gaze back to Robert, who's slumped against the wall, his face a mask of shock and disbelief. And you? I continue. You owe Sovereign Holdings, my company, $14 million. The bridge loan, the startup debt, the predatory interest Miller was charging you. I bought it all. Robert's voice is a broken whisper. I'll declare bankruptcy. I'll walk away. No, you won't. Because if you do, I'll hand the evidence of fraud, the forged conservatorship, the unauthorized sale of the judge's archives, the elder abuse, to the feds. You'll spend the next 10 years in a federal prison. I lean forward, my voice dropping to a whisper. You're not going to jail, Robert. That's too easy. You're going to be my junior clerk. You will live in the guest suite. You will fetch my tea. You will learn the law you tried to pervert. You work for me now. The elevator chimes. I hear the heavy tread of security escorting Elena out, her protests fading as the doors slide shut. The penthouse is quiet again. And then I hear it, the familiar click-clack of claws on parquet. Barnaby. Marcus's assistant must have brought him home. I reach out, my hand trembling, not from drugs, but from relief, and feel the soft, warm weight of his head resting on my knee. Hey, old friend, I whisper. He huffs softly, his tail thumping against the floor. I reach out and tap the smart hub on the nightstand. New master password, August 14th, I say. August 14th. The date of Barnaby's birth, a number Robert never bothered to learn because he never cared enough to ask. I listen as the digital lock engages, a final, satisfying thunk that deletes Robert's access and restores mine. The fortress is mine again. I may be blind, but as I feel Barnaby's steady breathing against my leg, as I hear Robert's ragged, defeated sobs from the hallway, as I smell the faint scent of Earl Grey wafting from the kitchen where Marcus's assistant has already started brewing a fresh pot, I have never seen my path more clearly. I am Claire. And I do not lose. If you made it to this moment, thank you for listening all the way through. Most people bail before the bill comes due. But here, the bill always comes due. What started as humiliation and disrespect ended with receipts, truth, and a payoff they never saw coming. If you want more stories where karma shows up without mercy, hit subscribe and come back for the next one. Now tell me in the comments, what was the most disgusting thing they did? What crossed the line for you?